And hello again, my students. It's good to be with you again. Let's see, this is going to cover the Ming Dynasty, this webcast, and from then on, we're going to be done with China. So we have this webcast. Be sure to do your one-page summary. It's going to be due Tuesday because Monday is a holiday for celebrating Martin Luther King's birthday. So I know you're all devastated for not going to school on Monday and having to go to school on Tuesday because you're so interested in learning. However, that's just the way it is. So you're gonna have to learn to deal with that. Anyway, I'm looking forward to seeing you on Tuesday. There will be a test next week on China, and that will conclude our first semester. So let us begin. So the Ming Dynasty is ultimately what succeeded the Yuan dynasty, which was a dynasty brought by the Mongols. So as you can see, the yellow here, this is all the Ming Dynasty. Again, it's not all of China, but it's a fair amount of China. They don't have Korea, so Korea is independent, and this is the Ming Dynasty. So it's a fair size, but not all of China. So the Ming Dynasty in 1368, the Chinese defeated the Mongols in the Yuan Dynasty. The revolt was led by a peasant by the name of Hong Moo. Now, Emperor Hong Wu founded the Ming Dynasty, which ruled China until 1644. So, a fair amount, a little over what here? We're looking at let's see, a little over 300 years or so. So, this capital is at Nanjing, but then eventually it got changed to Beijing. So the Emperor Hong Wu, his name means immensely martial or great leader. It has something to do with being a great general. And so anyway, he cared for the common people. He abolished slavery. He taxed the wealthy. He confiscated property of warlords who broke the law. Um, he did a lot of reformation here, but this guy was very paranoid, which we'll get into later. One of the reasons why he taxed the wealthy so hard was because he didn't want anybody rising up against him. We have Hong Wu ordered repairs for the irrigation systems to help the farmers. He began rebuilding the Great Wall. Most of the Great Wall you see today, if you do visit China, all that restoration was done during the Ming Dynasty. So Hongwu sponsored self-supporting villages and agriculture. He gave these two regions here. He allowed farmers to have their own land. So he would just give land to farmers and say, farm this land. However, that land was never really theirs. They couldn't transfer it or sell it, but it was still a place where they were able to work and to sell and to make money, but they could never own the land. It was never theirs. It was the government's. Okay, so Hong Wu, he gave land to everyone who was willing to cultivate desert lands or build new irrigation. This land would never be taxed. More land was brought under cultivation during his rule than any time before. So Hongwu is really trying to improve the production of farming and agriculture and goods for the people, and so he was just giving people incentives to go out into the desert and start farming and start building something so that more crops can grow so that China can become stronger and the people can be fed. Emperor Hongwu followed Confucian ideals. He did not support foreign trade, and that's going to be I think that's going to be a bit of a problem for China in the future since all these other countries are trading and becoming stronger and sharing each other's technology. China is going to have largely a very isolated policy at this time, and it's going to go all the way into the 1950s or so. He raised the military to a higher social status above all civil servants. And during the Ming Dynasty, we get the Imperial City, also known as the Forbidden City. So they built a new palace at Beijing. It was constructed from 1406 to 1420. The imperial city had more than 9,000 buildings because no commoner was allowed inside the walls. It became known as the Forbidden City. Now this still stands today. Um, it's uh, it's it's abandoned, but it still stands today, and you can actually go visit the Forbidden City and take tours and all that, I believe. And here's a large area. Here's a wider camera shot. So this is all the Forbidden or Imperial City. Basically, they just built themselves a palace city, but what they did is they just restricted that it only no commoners were allowed in, so it was a highly restrictive area, and eventually it lost its people. Other people moved on, and it just became forsaken. So the Ming literature. So we talked a little bit about movable type printing. So with movable type printing, it made books a lot more inexpensive. So books were easy to get a hold of. So Chinese storytellers would start writing novels instead of telling stories like for crowds or on the streets. Now these Chinese novels, they were divided into chapters, and at the point of the story where the storyteller would ask for money. So, well, if you're on the street or if you're in a group of people and there's a storyteller there, he'll start this elaborate story and then he'll pause. And people will know that that's the point where you need to pay the guy so he continues to tell it. So, um, so that's how they made their money. Is once they paused, if people wanted to hear the rest of that story, then they had to fork over some more money. And so what Chinese started doing when they were writing books is that part where they would pause, that's where they would end the chapter and start a new chapter. Many of those novels were still in print today, as you can see. This is a famous novel. It's called The Siyu Chi, or The Journey to the West. It's a classic Ming novel. A priest named Xuan Sang and a monkey disciple traveled for 20 years from China to India seeking Buddhist scriptures. And from what I understand, this is also a popular television series in China today. During the Ming Dynasty, there was a large demand for woodcut and block print art. Also, the porcelain industry grew and diversified, introducing colors other than the traditional blue and white. Now, Hong Moo, as I mentioned earlier, was very paranoid. He thought that everyone was after his seat and his power. He viewed lots of people as a threat. So he attempted to really micromanage and control the government, the bureaucracy. So he held secret councils to make state decisions. He used a network of spies to prevent opposition, and he ended up executing up to 100,000 Chinese accused of treason. So he's killing a lot of people. It's interesting what power does to people. This guy started off as a simple like farmer peasant who just wanted to free himself from the Yuan dynasty, and in the end he becomes the leader and the power is all his, and he ends up slaughtering hundreds of thousands of people, well, 100,000 people. Eunuchs are castrated males. They were the only non-royals allowed into the Forbidden City. A eunuch is, say this politely. It's a it's a male who had his manly parts cut off. And so he doesn't have any of those manly desires. So he's perfect um, to take care of the kings and the emperor's harem or women, because they know that that individual can't do anything even if he wanted to with inappropriately with those women. So eunuchs became a very sought after position for kings and people in high power, because they felt like they could trust them more, and as a result, the eunuchs became extremely powerful because they had the trust of many government officials. The Ming Dynasty had problems with inflation. Dun dun dun. Emperor Hong Wu printed too much paper. Remember we talked about that in class? You print too much paper and inflation hits. You print too much, you have a big problem. They had such a problem that eventually they had to go back to copper coins because again they need something of value to hold the money value of the money. So let's see, it's Zheng He is how you pronounce this name. Zheng He. Strange, huh? The Ming Dynasty had a great navy. From 1403 to 1433, the Chinese navy was led by Zheng He. He conducted 7 voyages throughout the world. This guy, we're not really going to go too much into him, but he is pretty an amazing individual. He uh, he was well beyond his time in exploration and in sea travel. Zheng He traveled throughout all of Asia, India, Africa, and Arabia. The Chinese junks, which is what they call their ships at the time, were 10 times the size of any European vessel and capable of transporting up to 500 men. So huge, beautiful vessels, the junks they used to travel on. The large European ships of the time, the Portuguese caravel, could only hold about 20 men. So just to give you an idea, this is a Chinese junk, and look at the size of the ship, and then look at Columbus's ship here. Does that kind of give you an idea of the scope and the magnitude of the ships that were built? The Ming Dynasty, however, was not interested in developing relationships with foreign countries. Like I said earlier, they adopted more of an isolationist foreign policy. So they're only interested in really trading with each other within China. And so sea exploration was outlawed. Outlawed. You couldn't be a Chinese and go and explore. Talk about freedom. Uh, Zheng He's records and ships were all destroyed, and shipbuilding was limited to small sized vessels. And so they wouldn't even build big ships like this anymore. They built smaller ships, maybe even smaller than Christopher Columbus's. The emperor made it illegal to leave China by sea. However, Dutch, Portuguese, and English merchants made their way to China. Caravans of horses and camels traveled the Silk Road for Chinese silk, tea, pottery, and other goods. The Portuguese were the first Europeans to reach China. This is when they arrived, 1514. About 1557, the Portuguese were allowed to establish a trading town at Ma Chao. Right here, Ma Chao. Now, Europeans built new foods such as sweet potatoes, corned beef, and dairy. So at Ma Chao, the Portuguese are going to set up a station there. They're going to trade heavily with the Japanese. So the Portuguese kind of get a pretty good foothold in that area of the world and become a powerful trader in that area. And they're trading with all the surrounding countries, but China is still sticking to themselves. Jesuits, which are Christian priests, they're coming to the Ming Dynasty and they're given permission to preach Christianity, um, but it really doesn't take off. Not a lot of Chinese join and become converted. China grew weak from internal power struggles. The Ming Dynasty began to weaken slowly. Too much bureaucracy, too much corruption, rival family groups, and even the eunuchs fought to gain more power. The eunuchs are now fighting for power. And the end. So that's the end. The Manchu, which are people north east of China and Manchuria, they're gonna come down and they're gonna take out the Ming Dynasty, and the Manchu are gonna rule for a time. So that's it for China. We are gonna end at the Ming, and the Manchu will eventually run into the more common area which we know in the last 200 years. And anyway, if you have any questions, of course, just ask me or you can email me. And just remember that we have that test coming up. Make sure you get out that 1 page summary. And I wish you all the best and look forward to seeing you on Tuesday. Bye bye.